Order in the court. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding crack that boomed like thunder. His voice, a firm and commanding bark, rolled over the room, stalling the restless mobs muttering into immediate silence. But even as the muttering ceased, the silence that was left behind seemed thicker than any noise. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the crushing hush of tension, the kind that makes each heartbeat ring too loudly in your own ears. The courthouse was packed to capacity. Each wooden bench creaked beneath the weight of hungry observers. The air hummed with the charged current of intrigue and scandal. Journalists leaned over laptops, fingers poised on keyboards, prepared to tap out each biting phrase. Cameras along the back wall flashed red, taking in every shot for the millions standing outside, watching in rapt attention on their screens. It was not merely a trial, it was a public hanging of secrets. And at the very heart of it all, beneath the eye-searing light of the fluorescent tubes, sat Meri Brown. Her very name had caused whispers. Once, she had been seen as the quiet, dutiful first wife of Kody Brown, matriarch of a sprawling polygamous dynasty that had enthralled the world. But today, she was not sitting as somebody's wife. She was not sitting as the woman left behind. Today, she sat as the storm prepared to destroy the empire that Kody had taken decades to build with sweat, charm, manipulation, and control. Meri's shoulders were stiff, but her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a stack of documents. Papers that could either save her or destroy everything. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths, but her eyes were steady, burning with a fire that had been stifled for too long. This wasn't just a fight for justice, it was her final stand, the one chance to reclaim the voice that had been silenced for years. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Every eye was on her. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to sync with her own. She could feel the weight of the past pressing on her shoulders. The betrayals, the nights of loneliness, the manipulation that had stolen her confidence. She could almost hear the echoes of Kody's dismissive voice in her head. "You're overreacting, Meri. You're imagining things. You're not enough." Her fingers tightened around the documents. Not enough? She thought bitterly. Today, I'm more than enough. Across the room, Kody Brown sat at the defense table, his golden curls slightly disheveled, his jaw clenched. His confidence, the charm that had once captivated television audiences, now looked more like arrogance. He sat with his arms folded tightly, pretending to be unfazed, but Meri knew him too well. She noticed the flash of apprehension in his eyes, the bounce of his knee against the table beneath him. He was concerned. He should be. Behind Kody stood the other wives. Or ex-wives, depending on which day of the week you were talking to. Janelle, anxious but steady, wrung a tissue between her fingers. Christine, once the family's ray of sunshine, would not meet Kody's eye, her eyes flicking toward Meri with a combination of guilt and prayer. And Robin, eternal Robin, sat near Kody, smiling with an air of innocence, but with her tightly closed hands revealing the tension. The air was thick, heavy with decades of secrets, competition, and unspoken betrayals. The audience wasn't here for a trial, they were here for judgment. They wanted to see the truth pour out, raw and nasty. The judge pushed his glasses up and cleared his throat. "Mrs. Brown, proceed." Meri stood up. For a second, her knees trembled, the pressure of 1,000 memories bearing down upon her. Then she recalled every tear she had shed in solitude. Every evening she had pleaded for love and been met with silence. Every time she had been urged to put the family first, and she had been left with nothing. She took a slow, measured breath and moved forward. Her heels rang on the gleaming floor, each step resounding through the room, like the tick of a time bomb counting down to detonation. She placed the papers on the table with a calculated slap. "This," she told him, her voice shaking at first but gaining strength with each word, "is my last stand." The words sliced the air like a knife. The reporters leaned forward, pens scraped against notepads. A surge of expectation swept through the courtroom. For years, Meri went on. "I was silenced. I was ignored. I was betrayed. I was told I was worth less, that my voice didn't count. But today, that ends. Today I will reveal to this court and the world the truth. Her gaze darted toward Kody. For a fleeting instant, the two stared at one another. His face was cold, but beneath it, she detected a flash of fear. He knew what was to happen. He just didn't know how much. Meri faced the judge again. Her voice firmer this time. The documents I have in my hands are not about a marriage. They're about a dynasty founded on lies. They're about financial betrayal, emotional manipulation, and secrets so deep that even the individuals closest to him weren't aware they were there. A low murmur swept through the courtroom. Some leaned forward. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The words secrets and betrayal carried weight. Meri's lawyer placed a reassuring hand on her arm, but she didn't need reassurance anymore. For the first time in years, she felt strong. She went on, "This isn't about me. This is about all of us who have ever been silenced. All the women who were told they weren't enough. All the partners who were dumped when they were no longer convenient. This is about the empire that was formed, not on love, but on deception." Her voice trembled a little, emotion bubbling through, but she didn't pause. Tears glimmered on her eyelids, but she wouldn't let them fall. She would not give Kody the pleasure of watching her crack. As she spoke, memories flashed in her mind like lightning flashes. Her wedding day when she had believed in forever. The many years of sharing a husband with 3 other women. The empty pain of seeing her marriage disintegrate as cameras rolled on every minute. And the moment she had finally figured out the truth, she had been nothing but a pawn on Kody's chessboard, discardable and interchangeable. But today, she was not disposable. Today, she was the queen who would turn the board. The judge leaned forward, apparently interested, in Mrs. Brown. "Are you telling me you have proof that directly accuses Mr. Brown of wrongdoing?" Meri's lips bent into the slightest, coolest smile. "Not just wrongdoing, Your Honor, crimes." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, even a few shouts filled the chamber until the judge slammed his gavel again. "Order! Order!" Kody shot to his feet, his face flushed with rage. "This is outrageous. She's twisting everything. Sit down, Mr. Brown." The judge barked. Kody's lawyer tugged at his sleeve, forcing him back into his seat, but his eyes never left Meri. His glare was full of fury, but also just barely fear. And in that instant, Meri knew she had him. Her voice echoed, steady but firm. "This is more than a divorce. This is more than shattered vows. What I am about to share could destroy more than a marriage. It could reveal the most sinister secrets of the Brown family empire." The room fell as silent as ever. The distant hum of the air, the scrape of a person's shoe, the nervous clearing of a spectator in the back row were all that could be heard. Each and every one of the souls present in that courtroom sat up straight, eager for what followed. Meri set her hand firmly on the pile of papers, knuckles white. She didn't budge, didn't say a word. She let the silence drag on, let the tension wind around the room tighter and tighter like a snake coiled to spring. And then her voice chilled everyone to their marrow with its calm. She breathed softly, "Shall we start?" The air had been so thick with tension that it nearly seemed to hum. Everyone strained forward in their seats, eager to hear what was coming next. The judge gestured to the prosecution, and it was time to proceed. The lead prosecutor, a keen-eyed woman in a navy blue suit, rose and shuffled her papers, her heels clicking on the highly polished floor. She moved to the middle of the courtroom. Her voice, crisp and biting, rang out like a bell. "Your Honor, members of the jury, today you will hear testimony that Mr. Kody Brown, once hailed as the leader of a remarkable polygamous family, has been keeping more than mere personal secrets. We will establish that he has been keeping millions of dollars in hidden accounts, funds diverted away from family enterprises, joint ventures, and even the personal income of his wives." The words slammed into the courtroom with the force of a thunderclap. Gasps filled the air, followed by frantic whispering. Reporters almost stumbled over each other as they pounded away at the keyboards, fingers banging into the keys. Kody's jaw clenched, his mouth twisting into a thin, bitter line. His lawyer's hand on his arm encouraged him to stay calm, but the rage in his eyes betrayed him. Meri sat still, her pale face set, her stomach revolted, but she did not glance away. This was what she had steeled herself for. the moment she had vowed she would not shy away from, however dreadful it made her feel. The prosecutor went on, her voice cutting the air. This wasn't cash earned freely and rightfully retained. No, this was cash earned by the wives, by the children, by the family dynasty built together in the name of harmony. Mr. Brown violated that trust, and Mrs. Brown, the first wife, the wife who was by his side from the start, was not only left in the dark, but was actively duped. The tension thickened. Janelle's eyes went wide with shock. Christine put a hand over her mouth, muttering something no one else could hear. And Robin, ever sworn to defend Kody, shifted in her seat, knuckles pale as she gripped the edge of the bench. The judge's brow shot up. "Do you have evidence to justify these allegations?" The prosecutor nodded curtly. "Yes, Your Honor, and it starts with Mrs. Brown's testimony." Everyone looked at Meri. Gradually she stood up. Her legs shivered a bit, but her voice was steady when she started. "For years I believed Kody with all my heart," she said. "I believed him with my loyalty, my love, my future. When we constructed this family, I thought it was real. I thought we were equals. But when I was hurting, emotionally, financially, spiritually, he was sending money into accounts I had no idea existed. Accounts under shell companies, secret names, hidden signatures. Accounts designed to exclude me entirely." She hesitated, her gaze running over the room. The air was thick, all ears listening for what she said. "This isn't betrayal," she said at last, her voice shaking with feeling. "It's fraud, it's theft, and it's evidence that the family that I thought I was guarding was merely a prop for him to act out the part he wanted the world to believe." The words cut. Even Kody, normally so self-satisfied and confident, squirmed in his seat. His attorney whispered desperately into his ear, but he hardly appeared to listen. His eyes were locked on Meri, burning with rage and incredulity. The prosecutor moved in on the jury. "You see, ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about a bad marriage. This is about a man who built an empire on TV, made millions off of businesses, books and appearances, while quietly diverting those gains away from himself, not his family." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Some spectators shook their heads in disbelief. Others nodded grimly, as if they had always suspected something like this. Meri's lawyer rose and added, "We have documentation, bank records, financial transfers, property deeds, that will prove without a doubt that Mr. Brown systematically worked to strip his wives of their rightful shares." The judge held up a hand. "We shall see the evidence shortly, but I would like to hear from Mrs. Brown herself." Meri's breath caught in her throat. This was the worst part she had feared, the moment when her personal grief turned into public spectacle. But she set her jaw and braced herself. "For years," she started slowly, "I sat quietly. I swallowed my pride. I told myself that my sacrifices were for the greater good, for the children, for the family. But while I was sacrificing, he was scheming. While I was giving everything, he was taking everything. And when I finally started to ask questions, I was shut out, ignored, belittled, told I was imagining things." Her voice broke, but she continued, "I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe in us. But you can't create a family on deception." And the more I dug, the more I saw those deceptions weren't just personal. They were financial, legal, criminal. The term criminal caused another wave of shock to roll through the room. Kody had had enough. He leaped to his feet, his words bellowing, "This is madness. She's bitter. She's resentful. And now she's attempting to destroy me, because she couldn't cope with her own failures. None of this is true." The judge's gavel came down once more. "Mr. Brown, calm down." Kody's attorney pulled him back into his seat, whispering frantically. Kody's chest heaved in and out, his fists clenched so hard his knuckles were white. But Meri didn't blink. For the first time in years, she was not intimidated by his rage. She looked at him, firm and unshaken, then turned again to the judge. "It's not about revenge," she said in a firm tone. "It's about the truth. The truth he never wanted the world to know." The silence that ensued was deafening. You could sense the gravity of the words hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Seched. And although the trial had yet to start, something was certain. This was not going to be some run-of-the-mill celebrity courtroom soap opera. This was going to be a war. The courtroom was already heavy with tension, But when Mary's lawyer stood and slid a thick sealed folder onto the judge's bench, the atmosphere shifted into something almost unbearable. People leaned so far forward in their seats, it looked like they might fall. Even the reporters paused, their fingers hovering above their keyboards, afraid to miss a single second of what was about to unfold. Meri sat absolutely still. Her fingers lay on her lap, folded so tightly together that the knuckles were white. This was it, the moment everything would tear apart or come together. Her attorney, a tall man with gentle eyes and a firm voice, unfolded the folder slowly, as if suspense itself were a weapon. "Your Honor," he remarked, his voice deep but authoritative. "Within this folder rests evidence that Mr. Kody Brown not only hid assets but also devised a plan calculated to divest his wives, both present and past, of any just claim to the empire they assisted him in building." The judge pushed up his glasses and looked down. "Proceed." The lawyer produced the first item, a stack of bank records. He waved them at the jury. "Here we have proof of payments of big amounts of money, well over $2 million, moving out of the family's combined business accounts into shell companies in names that none of the other wives knew." Gasps were sent rippling through the room. Christine's hand flew to her chest, as though the breath had been knocked out of her. Janelle shook her head very slowly, incredulity spreading across her face. Even Robin, always the steadfast supporter, paled, lips clenched tightly together. Mary's lawyer continued. "The shell corporations were traced back to accounts controlled solely by Mr. Brown. These transfers were done secretly, over the course of years, hidden under vague labels like consulting fees and property expenses. In reality, they were funds siphoned away, meant to secure his wealth, while leaving the women with nothing." The jury shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. But the attorney wasn't done yet. He placed the bank documents on the table and produced the second document. "This document," he explained, "was the most incriminating. This," he announced, holding a single page of paper aloft for all to see, "is a contract." The single word created a shockwave in the room. A contract implied planning. A contract implied intent. The attorney placed it on the projector screen, so the text looked big enough for all to be able to read. "This document is a confidential agreement between Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robin Brown. It was signed in secret." The contract read that if any of the other wives, Meri, Janelle, or Christine, left the marriage or tried to make legal claims, all monetary holdings, property titles and business interests would go to Mr. Brown. The other wives would get nothing. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, cries, whispers. It was pandemonium. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order, order." But nothing could quiet the tempest that had just broken out. Christine faced Janelle, crying uncontrollably. "He set this up. He set the whole thing up." Janelle was devastated, as if someone had pulled the ground from beneath her feet. "All those years, all the sacrifices, we were pawns." Robin buried her head in her hands, but the jury wasn't considering her for sympathy anymore. They were fixed on Kody, their faces set, suspicious, angry. Kody stood up, his face red with anger. "This is a trap. That contract is not real. Meri is manipulating everything." But the attorney interrupted him, his tone like steel. "Your Honor, we've authenticated signatures of Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robin Brown. Independent handwriting analysts have verified them as authentic. And we've got witnesses who will testify that Mr. Brown bragged about safeguarding his empire against the other wives." The room was thrown into shocked silence. Kody's lips opened, and he failed to utter a single word. He sat back in his chair, his jaw spewing out furious work, his fists clenching and unclenching. The judge leaned forward, his face stern. "Mr. Brown, this is serious evidence. Very serious indeed." Meri finally found her voice, shaking but firm. "Do you understand, Your Honor? This wasn't about a failing marriage. This was about control, about power, about making sure when he was finished with us, when he didn't need us anymore, we would be cast aside with nothing. That contract is evidence that we weren't wives to him. We were insurance policies. We were leverage." Her voice rang out like a hammer hitting steel. The jury looked at her with open mouths, their pens paused over their notebooks. Robin slowly raised her head, her cheeks streaked with tears. "I didn't realize it would be used this way," she breathed, hardly above a whisper. But the harm was done. The attorney wasn't done. "And it goes further. Property deeds, buried under standalone LLCs, were quietly moved into one another's names, without the other wives' knowledge. Businesses touted as family-owned were secretly channeled into Kody's name in isolation. Even family gifts, even college funds for the children, transferred discreetly into accounts out of reach. The gravity of the disclosures weighed on all of them in the room. Some observers shook their heads at the horror of it. Others glared at Kody with barely suppressed indignation. The prosecutor moved forward. This is not merely a case of marital discord. This is financial exploitation. This is manipulation so calculated, so intentional, that it crosses the line into fraud. Mr. Brown utilized his wives for work, for money, for television celebrity, and then erected legal safeguards to make them never able to claim what was theirs. Kody pounded his fist on the table. Lies, all lies. She's angry, she's bitter, and she'll stop at nothing to destroy me. The judge's gavel snapped again. Mr. Brown, please restrain yourself, or I will have you removed from this courtroom. But Kody could not resist. He glared at Meri, his anger shaking his voice. You think you can destroy me? You think you can rewrite history? Without me, none of you would have had anything. None of you. His words lingered, poisonous and telling. And at that instant, the faces of the jury grew harder. They were not viewing a victim of deception. They were viewing a man whose veneer had dropped. Meri looked at him, her voice gentle but firm. Without us you had nothing. And now the world will finally see the truth. The silence that ensued was heartbreaking. The papers lay before the judge, incontrovertible and incriminating. As the courtroom hummed with the understanding that this was no family squabble, it was the dissolution of an empire founded on deceit. The evidence was out. The game had shifted, and for the first time it seemed that Kody Brown would not be leaving unscathed. The courtroom was abuzz after the bombshell testimony, the bank statements, the secret agreement, the concealed companies. Kody Brown appeared cornered. The jury appeared to be convinced, and for the first time in years, Meri felt power switch in her direction. But in trials, power never remains in one camp for too long. The defense attorney, a sharp, cunning man in a sleek black suit, rose from his chair with a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He walked to the center of the courtroom slowly, as if savoring the moment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began. You've heard some shocking claims today, but let's not forget, appearances can be deceiving. He stopped, glancing around the room, his eyes holding on Meri a fraction of a second too long. If Mrs. Brown is going to call my client a betrayer, let us look at what she has done. At what she has revealed about her motives, at what she has indicated she is not the victim she would have everyone believe, about a woman with secrets of her own. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Meri's heart pounded in her chest. She knew precisely where this was heading. The attorney raised a file. Your Honor, I offer Exhibit F, online chat transcripts, text messages and voicemails between Mrs. Meri Brown and someone she thought might be a romantic interest. Something the public might remember as the catfishing scandal. The room exploded in gasps. Even the reporters who had been hunched and scribbling, suddenly looked up with wide eyes. Meri's stomach twisted. She clenched her fists, fighting to keep her composure. She had survived that scandal years ago. But now dragged into this trial, it threatened to unravel everything she had just built. The defense attorney's voice was full of satisfaction. For anyone who might need reminding, Mrs. Brown had what she thought was an emotional and potentially romantic relationship with a stranger on the internet. That stranger, it turned out, was not who she imagined. She was tricked. What is relevant here is intent. She pursued another relationship willingly, still legally committed to Mr. Brown. He swung to face the jury, his words biting. Is this the behavior of a faithful wife, or is it the behavior of a woman who seeks revenge? A woman in flight, and using whoever she could find to make it happen. Kody leaned back in his chair, his lips curving into the slightest smile. For the first time in hours, he appeared almost at ease. Meri's attorney leaped to his feet. Objection, this is outside the scope of financial fraud before us. The judge scowled. Overruled. I'll permit limited inquiry. Go on cautiously, counselor. Meri's heart pounded in her ears. The defense lawyer moved toward her slowly, like a predator stalking prey. Mrs. Brown, he said suavely. Do you deny these discussions occurred? Her voice trembled, but she pushed the words out. No, they occurred, but they do not pertain here. He seized on it.
Not applicable. You were gaining the trust of a stranger behind your husband's back. You were scheming to desert him. Could you not have started gathering so-called evidence not to reveal truth, but to destroy him on account of your own guilt? Whispers broke out in the gallery. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Even Christine and Janelle exchanged uneasy looks. Mary's throat tightened. She wanted to scream that this wasn't the same, that her pain, her loneliness, her desperation for love had nothing to do with the empire Kody had stolen. But the shame of it, those late nights, those messages burned hot against her skin. The defense lawyer waved printed text transcripts. Let the record reflect that Mrs. Brown wrote, and I quote, "I don't care if Kody ever finds out. I just want to be free." The words hung there like venom. Mary shut her eyes. She recalled dictating them in desperation, when her marriage was an empty husk, when she had been abandoned and replaced. But to hear them distorted before the world seemed like a blade jabbed into her heart. The tone of the defense lawyer shifted to cold. "Ladies and gentlemen, the woman here is not a woman in search of justice. She is a woman in pursuit of vengeance. A woman who has been plotting her revenge for years, biding her time before she could get revenge on the man whom she claims she betrayed her. Can you really believe her words when her own behavior indicates deceit?" The courtroom erupted into chaos once more. Reporters clacked away. People leaned over each other, whispering speculations. The jury appeared stunned, some writing notes, others scowling at Mary. The judge slammed the gavel down. "Order, order in the court." Mary's lawyer rose, his voice sharp. "Your Honor, this line of questioning is designed to humiliate my client, not to uncover truth. Her personal mistakes do not erase the documented financial fraud of Mr. Brown." The judge sighed. "The jury will decide what weight to give this testimony. Continue." The defense attorney inched closer to Mary. His tone lowered, but it reached over the hushed courtroom. "Tell us, Mrs. Brown, if you would betray your husband once, why would anyone trust you're not betraying him again, right now in this courtroom?" The words bit deep. For the first time, Mary stumbled. Her lips opened, but no sound escaped. The shame, the humiliation, the burden of her past weighed her down like anchors. Kody smiled from his table, his eyes twinkling with triumph. For him this was victory, not legal, but emotional. He desired her broken, humiliated, silenced. Mary's vision blurred as tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Then finally, there was a sound. Her voice broke the silence. It was quiet, shaking but indomitable. "Yes, I was wrong. I was broken. I was desperate. I was looking for love where love didn't exist. But my errors do not negate his offenses. My isolation does not justify his deceptions. I might have been betrayed once, but that is not to say the truth I speak before you today is any less true." The courtroom fell silent. The defense attorney squinted, but Mary spoke the truth. Still, it was said. The jury appeared agitated. Doubt was sown. Tension swirled in the air. Would they view Mary as a courageous woman bringing out the truth, or as an angry wife striking back in revenge? The response would be soon. But when the judge adjourned for recess, one thing was sure. The trial had just been transformed. Mary wasn't the only secret keeper. And now everybody wondered whose version of truth would be able to endure the light of day. The massive wooden doors of the courtroom creaked shut as everybody came back from recess. The atmosphere in the room was charged, almost claustrophobic, as though the room itself could sense that the moment of reckoning approached. Mary sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clenched together in her lap. She had recovered during the break, washing the sting of humiliation from the defense's trap away. Her former errors had been dragged into the light, distorted against her, but she was not going to let them be the end of things. Across the room, Kody sat complacently, murmuring to his attorney, confidence emanating from him. For a man who had just been cornered with incriminating evidence, he was oddly tranquil, too tranquil. The jury filed back in, their expressions impassive. Flash bulbs outside the windows lit up as reporters pushed to get into place. Millions of viewers, scattered through living rooms and social media streams, held their breaths for this very moment. The verdict that would ruin or save the Brown dynasty. The judge's gavel boomed like thunder. "This court is back in session. We will now hear closing arguments." Mary's final plea.
Mary's lawyer stood first. He buttoned his jacket, paced forward, and spoke with measured fire. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the evidence. You've seen the contracts signed in secrecy. You've seen the accounts drained, the funds shifted, the promises broken. My client, Mrs. Meri Brown, gave her life to this family. She sacrificed her happiness, her dreams, her very identity, all for the empire that Mr. Brown built on deception. He paused, pointing to Kody. Mr. Brown comes across as a man of religious beliefs, a leader, husband, and father. But here, what we have revealed is greed, betrayal, a concerted attempt to drive my client out of her rightful position and enrich himself and secure only one wife. This isn't about jealousy. This is about justice. The attorney inched forward over the jury box, his voice firm but strong. Yes, Mrs. Brown is human. Yes, she erred. But errors of the heart do not dissolve the truth of fraud. They do not erase decades of silencing, manipulation, and financial fraud. She stands here today, not for vengeance, but for the truth. And it is your responsibility to give it. He returned to his seat. Mary's chest rose and fell sharply. The courtroom was silent, all eyes now turning to the defense. Kody's last defense. Kody's attorney rose slowly, confidently. He adjusted his tie and stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've witnessed here is not justice. It is theater. A bitter wife, long estranged, grasping at straws to tarnish the name of the man who once supported her. Yes, Mr. Brown signed contracts. Yes, he moved money. But families of this size require complicated arrangements. Business dealings, property management, family support. These are not crimes. They are necessities. He smirked, letting the words sink in. And let us not forget, this case hinges on credibility. Mrs. Brown's credibility. And we've already seen how easily she strays from loyalty, how quickly she seeks escape, how recklessly she makes choices that betray trust. Her so-called evidence. Just another act of her long vendetta against my client. The lawyer turned, pointing a sharp finger toward Meri. This is not a case of fraud. This is a case of revenge. Do not be deceived by tears and melodrama. Do not let sympathy interfere with your judgment. The law requires facts, and the facts in this case do not multiply to guilt. My client is innocent. He sat down, a look of triumph on his face. Kody relaxed, folding his arms, sure he had the day. The jury's silence. The judge addressed the jury. You have heard the case. You have seen the evidence. Now it is your responsibility to deliberate. Bailiff, take the jury to the chambers. The jurors rose and marched out. The doors closed. The courtroom fell into awkward silence. Each cough, each rustle of paper sounded too loud. Hours passed as if they were minutes. Meri sat paralyzed, eyes fixed on the table, reliving every word she had uttered. Would they penetrate the defense's onslaught, or would they view her as a resentful ex-wife, undeserving of justice? Kody, however, reclined at ease, mooting jokes to his attorney. To him, this was already a victory. Finally, after 3 grueling hours, the jury arrived. Mary's heart pounded inside her chest. This was it. The verdict, the foreman, a middle-aged woman with piercing eyes, rose as the judge spoke to her. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor, we have. The courtroom fell silent. The bailiff removed a crumpled sheet of paper from the foreman and handed it over to the judge. He unfolded it deliberately, reading the words, then nodded and handed it back. In the case of Meri Brown versus Kody Brown, on the charges of financial fraud, concealment of assets, and breach of fiduciary duty, the room waited with bated breath. We, the jury, find the defendant, Kody Brown, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, reporters scrambling to send updates. Cameras flashed wildly. Mary's eyes filled with tears, not of humiliation this time, but of release. Years of silence, betrayal, and being cast aside had led to this moment. Justice, Kody's face went white. He leapt from his chair, yelling, "This is a falsehood. This is a conspiracy. I created this family. I created all of it. You can't steal it from me." The judge banged the gavel. "Mr. Brown, sit down or you will be in contempt." But Kody raged on, his voice cracking with fury. You'll regret this, Meri. All of you. His lawyer tugged at his sleeve, trying to calm him, but the empire he had built was crumbling before everyone's eyes. The aftermath. The judge continued, unshaken. Sentencing will be scheduled in 30 days. Until then, Mr. Brown is remanded to house arrest with restrictions. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell one last time. Meri sat silently in stunned dismay, the ring echoing in her ears. Christine and Janelle, surrounding her, cried tears of relief, hugging her close. Reporters flooded into the aisle, calling out to her, "Meri, how are you feeling? What about the future of the Brown family?" But Meri was not yet ready to talk. She rose slowly, her legs shaking, and gazed across the courtroom. Kody slumped in his chair, head in his hands. The great patriarch, the man who had dictated every step of their life, was conquered now. And for the very first time, Meri didn't feel afraid. She didn't feel insignificant. She felt liberated. She picked up her papers, tossed her chin up, and exited the courtroom flanked by Christine and Janelle. Cameras trailed behind, but she no longer covered her face. Not today. The crowd erupted in the street, fans shouting her name. She had been the quiet one, the one forgotten, the left-behind wife, for years. But today she was the woman who toppled Kody Brown's kingdom. And as the sun went down on the courthouse steps, Meri knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of her story. It was far from the end,